After testing the Galeshot in beta event, I have to say Galeshot is as fun as I expected it to be. So in this video, I want to give you my full review of how I think Galeshot will be played, how I personally like this playstyle, and some criticism regarding it as well. Let me know your takes in the comments down below. Thanks as always to my dear supporters that help me keep the lights on, and now without much further ado, let's jump straight in. So first of all, I have other videos like this about Troubadour and Paragon out already, so be sure to check those out if you want to. I have to be honest, this one here is a little bit shorter. Why is that? Because I think Galeshot is actually pretty similar to what I already expected before I tried it. It is a very nice spec that fills its role in PvE very clearly. It is a power DPS build or it is a power quickness build. And if you play the power quickness variant, you provide almost no other boons than quickness. The way you provide it is, in my opinion, very, very fun. The class that I would compare it to is Deadeye. It's very similar to Deadeye, just a little bit superior in my opinion, but I think it is really quite similar to Deadeye, the quickness build that is, because you just provide quickness. It's really selfish, just quickness for your party, and that's about it. So in general, the profession mechanic looks amazing, and it feels quite fun to play in my opinion as well. Yes, you could make the argument it is a little bit like boring. It doesn't like do too much. It's just like another, like a kit that you can swap in all the time. But the cool thing for me is that it is really like fluid. It's really, you can swap in, swap out, and that feels quite nice. The attacks are fast paced. You have some interesting combo potential there, and you can alter the combo potential depending on if you're running quickness or not. I think that's really fun that you normally would use a different rotation in there, and it resets some cooldowns and stuff. I really like this. I think this is exactly the playstyle that I want to have from an elite spec, and especially from class design spec that is full on in this bow and fast paced combo potential thing. I think that's perfectly fitting. So I think it's really fun. So what is my criticism here in PvE is that it's only a power build. So if you only want to play a power build, that is fine for me, and that's why I like this spec so much. I think it's very clearly designed what it wants to fill. For people that also want to play a condi build, that want to play some healer build, this is not in there. So it's one of the more, let's say, rigid, less flexible specs that we get with this elite spec pack. But I think that's good. I think that's how elite specs should be designed. But I can see the criticism there again. And I also think it's actually, to be honest, how a lot of other elite specs that we got earlier, especially with EOD, should have been. I think we should have gotten the UI for those feathers similar like that. We should have gotten that, for example, for Bladezone, and maybe even to some extent a little bit different for Virtuoso, something like that. But personally, I think that looks really cool and plays really fun. And like I said, the build variety on this is actually quite low. It's either full DPS in PvE or it's quickness DPS. That's about it. And in competitive modes, I would say the build variety is even lower. It's probably always some kind of roaming spec that does a lot of damage. It will never be a side node on PvP. If you play it in Circ, it will only be a DPS. And if you play it in roaming, it will be some kind of offensive like roamer. It will not be some kind of bruisery celestial spec or something you really want to burst down your opponent, and that's about it. I think that's good. I mean, it fits the bow playstyle. I have to be honest, in PvE, this bow playstyle is like, yes, you have the bow, but every other weapon then that you choose is melee. That's just how it is, because the melee weapons are better. But you can use the bow. Now, after the buffs, the longbow buffs are actually quite decent. And in competitive modes, I think that's not the case. You really want to stick at range as much as you can. You might have some melee set as well, like sword or something for mobility, and damage, of course. But I think it's really like longbow and the Galeshot bow are actually looking quite promising together in competitive modes. So I think that's actually quite nice. I think that's really filling the archer fantasy that people wanted to have with the Galeshot. I'm personally quite happy with that as well. And I will probably play it a lot in PvP or even in PvE as a DPS if I get to play DPS. So I actually am quite enjoying this spec. I think the same thing goes, for example, for Druid or even to some extent Untamed. Yes, you have the pet that can be a bit annoying, and that did not change that much. Yes, they updated it a bit, the pet AI. I don't know if it changed that much, to be honest, but at least it's a little bit better, more instantaneous the effect. But I'm not the biggest pet enjoyer, but I think the Galeshot is not focused too much on the pet. That's why I like it so much. And now let's talk a bit more about numbers and the general direction that I think they should go with. I think the DPS build is actually really fun. In PvE, currently we have a benchmark that you can see here in the background. You can see two distinct rotations for Galeshot as full DPS build in PvE. And the first one is by Pip. Be sure to check out their channel in the description down below. It is, so to say, the more straightforward approach and reaches 49k DPS, so quite high for a power DPS build. But we also have some crazy cooked up rotation by Sutim. So be sure to check out their channel as well, which is the second one that I'm showing right now. And it reaches 57k DPS. So I think if you refer to the second one, I think the damage numbers will go down for sure. They will nerf it probably quite drastically, so that it is somewhere below 50. The 49k, I think that's more reasonable, but still quite high. As you can see, the burst for both of them is extremely high in terms of like start of the fight, and that's obviously exactly what we need, for example, for fractal fights and very short fights. In general, a power build is very good if it has high burst, so having a high end number as well is just really, really strong, and I expect to get some nerfs there. Thanks again for letting me use and showcase your two benches there. Thanks Pip, thanks Sotim. In general, this is like a really cool build, a really fun build, will probably be really strong in fractals. You have a lot of multi-hits, so that's quite fun to play as well, I think. And in general, the DPS variant looks really good. And the quickness DPS variant is obviously a little bit lower DPS, but it's still playable and really fun. Definitely playable, I would say. And in general, I think the numbers there and the gameplay wise, it looks really good. What could they improve? So I would say some of the traits are really competitive mode focused, I would say. Like the important part here is that I criticize here is that like at least 3 or 4 traits are like you would never ever take them in PvE. It's like really, you are just like, no, don't do that. And that's a little bit sad because I like to have trait design that makes the build still viable, changes to a certain situation so that you can adapt to what currently is like needed for the encounter without losing like all your agency. So if you have one DPS trait that gives you a huge DPS buff, and if you drop this, you deal no damage, that's sad. I think such a trait should only exist if it's competing against a boon trait like quickness. That's the case in Galeshot, that's good. But there are other traits that just increase your DPS. You take those and you will never take any of those that don't increase your DPS and are just some utility traits. This is a criticism in general in Guild Wars 2 that I have, but here in the Galeshot traits it comes out the most. And I think that's a little bit sad, but in general I think the traits are way better than other elite specs that we already saw in my reviews. So I personally think that's actually quite good. What else do I have to talk about here? I personally think it is cool that we also get a new aggressive elite skill. That's something that is a little bit missing a lot of the times, if you like, with the exception of Soul Beast. All Ranger elite specs have always like some kind of defensive elites, and now it's quite offensive. I like that. So in general, it's actually looking quite promising. The other thing that I want to mention here is it looks like not the best solo build. So if you want to play it in open world, in a group, in a meta event or something, it's amazing as a DPS, even as a quick DPS. But as soon as you want to tackle some really hard challenges like soloing legendary bounties or something, I was theory crafting some solo open world build, and it doesn't really provide that because you can't run Celestial because you deal no condi damage, or you will lose all the value of your Galeshot bow. And then I also think that if you play a full power build, yes, you can run Sekiro's Relic, and yes, you deal some nice damage, but it is really bursty and has not the biggest consistent DPS. And the important part is you have very bad boon access. Like I said, it's only providing quickness to itself, so you have to rely on core ranger traits, which are not the best if you can't provide a lot of boon duration in your gear. So I think it's really lacking a little bit of like a really good solo build that is really good in hard encounters, because you have to keep your range, and only then you deal some nice damage, and you have no boons. And the healing is also really lackluster. So I think it lacks the best parts for a solo build, which is okay. Not every class has to have the best solo builds, because Ranger already has Untamed, Druid, and even Soul Beast that are amazing in soloing. So I think not every single elite spec has to be that good, but I personally think there could be some boons added to the Galeshot like traits. Maybe those traits that I said earlier that are a little bit boring, they could add some boons in there, and you had to make the decision dropping some DPS for some self-sustained boons or something. I think that would be more interesting than just having some increases and some evades or some removal of movement impairing conditions that you will never use in PvE. So maybe make something interesting in there. That's my whole criticism. Like I said, let me know your takes in the comments down below. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, be sure to leave a like and subscribe for more content like this. If you want to see the Troubadour analysis, be sure to check out this video. And if you want to see the Paragon review, be sure to check out this video. Thanks again for letting me use and showcase your 2 benches there. Thanks Pip, thanks Sotim. Thanks again to all my supporters. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you all in the next video.